Hello everyone, your boy's back. Now I just had an exam yesterday and a presentation today as well as an essay due today, so I just did two all-nighters in a row. Kind of a little bit tired, but you know what? You guys seem to enjoy the content very much, and I'm trying to put out as much content as possible for you guys to enjoy. So I'm back on here trying to talk about neoclassical economics theories. Now, before we begin about the video, I want to answer to B-Boy Super Freeze real quick. So, B-Boy Super Freeze asked if I can make a video talking about teleport and how to use teleport. I will definitely make that video. I will cover that subject in my video where I will talk about top lane. So definitely stay tuned for that. But before I get to top lane, mid lane, or jungle, I want to first get the fundamentals down for you guys. So you know it will be more logical for you guys. So it's gonna be easier for you guys to follow my my concepts and my logic behind my theory of League of Legends. All right, now let's move on to onto the actual video, the actual subject of today, which is the concepts of neoclassical economics theory. So I can sit here and talk about economics all day long. It's actually one of my favorite subjects, and you know, I can talk about the history of economics. I can talk about the different types of economic systems as well as different types of economic theories, but you probably get bored. So I don't want to cover all of that. I just want you guys to, you know, walk away from this video understanding three key concepts of neoclassical economics theory and how you can apply these concepts and your understanding of these concepts into your League of Legends games, and how you can utilize these concepts and your understanding of these concepts to win you more games and understand the game better in general. Alright, so just a little background of neoclassical economics. It's actually a response to Austrian economics. So basically, the most important concept is the concept of marginal utility and utility maximization, but we'll get to that later. First, I want to talk about the idea of constraint choices. Right? So the idea of constraint choices is one of the fundamental concepts of economics in general. However, it's really important in neoclassical economics. All right. So let's go here. First off, I want to talk about the idea of scarcity. Scarcity. There we go. All right. So scarcity, by definition, it's the state of being scarce or in short supply or shortage. So it's a fundamental economic concept, not economic problem. It's economic concept. All right. So of having unlimited human wants in a world of limited resources. All right. Unlimited human wants is whatever. You don't want to really worry about that. However, in a world of limited resources, that is really important. All right. So in a way, you have to think of a League of Legends game as like real life, real world. You know, there are only a limited amount of gold that you can get, right? There is only a limited amount of champions that you have on each team. You only have a limited amount of mana, for example, before you run out of mana, right? Like all these concepts lies fundamental within economics, and you can transition these concepts into your League of Legends games. And I will give one classic example, all right, of constraint choices. Actually, I'll get to that later. I'll give that classic example later. All right, so now you understand, you kind of have an idea of what the idea of scarcity means. Again, just to summarize, it's the idea of limited resources. Okay, so you have limited resources and you need to achieve things with those limited resources. Therefore, you need to make choices. And because your resource is limited, you have constrained choices, right? So constrained choices, there we go, constrained choices, right? So constrained choices, what does this mean? Okay, when an economic agent must determine the optimal combination of choice variables in the face of a constraint limiting the set of feasible combinations, right? What does that mean? That means you have a constraint, limited amount of resources, all right? And you need to figure out, you need to make the choice of, you know, which combinations of variables or which combinations of goods, right, that you want to have, okay? And then it brings us to this idea of marginal utility and utility maximization. Marginal utility. Alright, so by definition, marginal utility is the additional satisfaction a consumer gains from consuming one more unit of a good or a service. Alright, so let's say, for example, right now you have 1 unit of apple, right? And then you consume an additional unit of apple, you get, let's say, 2 units of utility. Well, then, therefore, your marginal utility on that last unit of apple is 2. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense, because now I want to talk about utility maximization, alright? So the whole idea, right, behind the constraint choices and utility maximization is that, you know, you have limited amount of resources and you want to make the most optimal combination of choices to maximize your utility, to maximize your satisfaction from using your resources. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Alright, see? The theory of consumer behavior, yeah, that's whatever. Like law of diminishing marginal utility, that's also whatever. You don't really need to understand these concepts. Alright, so the utility maximization model is built based on the following assumptions. Hold on a second. Wait, what? Whatever. Talk about this. Try to look for a definition, like a clear definition. Alright, when making a purchase decision, but it's not just necessarily just a purchase decision, it can be any decision, alright? A consumer or just a person, an individual, attempts to get the greatest value possible from the least amount of money or a constrained amount of resources, alright? So you try to get the greatest value possible, the greatest satisfaction possible from your limited amount of resources. Okay? And then, within this utility maximization problem, you also have the concept of opportunity cost. Alright? The loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. Right? For example, right now I'm faced with 2 choices that I can make. I can either make choice A and get good A, for example, or I can make the choice B and get good B, right? So if I make the choice of taking good A, then obviously the cost of me getting the good A is me not getting the good B, right? I hope it makes sense. So, like, a real-world concrete example would be, let's say, okay, I want to go to school for 1 additional year, right? And, you know, then you get the problem of what's the cost of me going to school, right? And you know, a normal person would say, oh, it's probably like $4,000 per semester, for example. So 2 semesters in a year, so that would be $8,000 for the year, for the whole year. That would be the cost of you going to school. However, a person with an economic perspective, right, would argue that the opportunity cost of you going to school for 1 additional year is not only just the 8,000 fees that you need to pay to school. It's also the foregone opportunity of working for 1 full year Therefore, you're giving up the potential of gaining, let's say, $20,000 for working the whole year, plus the additional $8,000 of the actual cost. So therefore, the opportunity cost of you gaining one additional year of schooling would be $28,000 instead of only $8,000. Does that make sense? So that is a real-world concrete example of opportunity cost. And how can we relate like this kind of concept into a League of Legends game, for example, right? So let's say I'm gonna go into a game right now, like a custom game right now. Just want to talk about this real quick. Alright, so I talk about this in all of my other videos as well. League of Legends, just like in real life, it's all about making decisions. Alright, there's the concept of constraint choices. Okay, you have limited amount of resources and you need to make decisions based on your limited amount of resources in order to maximize your satisfaction, right? Or to maximize your gain from those decisions that you make within a League of Legends game. I hope it makes sense. I know that for people who never had any kind of experience in economics, this might be like really vague. Alright, so here's an example of opportunity cost in League of Legends. For example, right now I'm walking to the top lane. What is the cost of me walking to the top lane? You know, like people would say, oh, there is no cost, you know, like your skills don't even cost mana, so you can literally just spam them for free. But that's actually wrong. The cost of me running top lane is me not being able to go into another lane. Alright, so right there I made a choice of either going top lane or going mid lane, for example. Alright, we're just gonna keep it simple and only two choices. Alright, I can either go top or I can either go mid. Okay, so I made the choice of going top lane. So what is the cost of me going top lane? It's that I didn't go mid lane. I could have went mid, but I didn't go mid. I went top. So the cost of me going top is me not being mid lane. Okay, it kind of you know, relates back to the concept of map pressure, right? So let's say if you have a champion top lane, or let's say if you have an enemy champion top lane, what is the cost for the enemy champion of being top lane? Is that he can't be somewhere else on the map, right? So if you can pull two people up to the top lane, right, what is the opportunity cost of these two people? Is that they can't be somewhere else on the map. Therefore, right, the enemy team has to pay a certain cost, right, of a numbers advantage on the other side of the map. Right? Makes sense? Another example, and this is really crucial in lane. For example, I want to go for a last hit. Right there, you see that? So what's the cost of me last hitting the minion? You know, some people might argue that, hey, there is no cost, it's actually free gold, right? You just click on it, you jump on it, and you get 20 gold. Right? However, that's wrong. The opportunity cost of me jumping on this minion is that I could have jumped on another minion. Or I could have even jumped on the enemy champion. Alright? Does that make sense? So, when I'm jumping on the minion and autoing this minion, what I'm doing, what am I not doing? I'm not attacking the other minions. I'm not attacking the enemy champion. Imagine if there's an enemy champion right now. I'm not attacking the enemy champion. Does that make sense? So this relates to the idea of trading in lane. Let's say your opponent uses all of his skills on a champion. Not on a champion, on the minions. For example, Imagine I just use all of my skills on a minion, all of my skills are on cooldown, right? Then I'm gonna ask you, what is the cost of me as a Rengar? What's the cost of me, you know, using a skill on a minion? You know, most people, they will say, oh, it doesn't cost anything, it's free, you can literally just spam it. That's why you build cooldown reduction on Rengar, right? Well, to some extent, they're correct. However, the cost, the opportunity cost of me using my skills on the minion is that I cannot use the same skills on the champions. So within my cooldown, there's a close window, right? There's not a close window. There's a short window of time, window of opportunity, where I am weaker in a trade. And if the enemy champion decides to take a trade with me at that time, I am going to lose that trade. Why? Because that is the cost of me using my skills on the minions. Alright? So one last example. It's the classic Riven dilemma. Now everyone understands that Riven's the fucking broken champion. Okay? Riven's a broken champion. And she can literally just spam all of her spells. Right? However, some low elo Riven mains, alright? Low elo Riven players, alright? They always make the mistake of wasting their Qs, wasting their skills on minions. Alright? And when they waste their skills on minions, what does that mean? That means they won't have their skills up anymore for a trade. So if you ever play against the Riven and you see that they waste all of their skills on the minions, you should definitely go in and go for a trade. Alright? And the other day, one of my students asked me, okay, so what can I do playing against the Riven as a Wukong, alright? And I just told him, yo, you don't do anything. You literally just sit back, wait for him to get onto you first. And if he gets onto you first, you will definitely win the trade. Why do I say that? Okay? Because most of the novice Riven players, or the low elo Riven players, what they do is, imagine I'm standing right here, and the Riven is right here. What they're going to do is, they're going to waste their shield, their E, and their Qs to try to get onto me. Alright? And by the time they get onto me, their skills will be on cooldown. They already wasted their skills. And because their skills on cooldown, I can then go in for a trade. Does that make sense? So that is the classic Riven dilemma, right? So if you're a Riven player, you always want to ask yourself, should I use my skills on minions, or should I save my skills and, you know, threaten the potential trade, or even the potential all-in, so I can zone the enemy champion? Okay? Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. Okay, anyway, back to what I was talking about earlier. Alright, so that's the concept of opportunity cost, the concept of constraint choices, right? The concept of marginal utility and utility maximization. Again, just to summarize one more time to refresh your memory. Marginal utility is the satisfaction or the benefit that you gain from one additional unit of consumption, or one additional unit of good, or one additional unit of whatever, right? And utility maximization is the idea that within your constraint choices, within your limited amount of resources, right? Within this idea of scarcity, you want to gain the highest amount of satisfaction within limited amounts of resources, alright? Now, we go back to the idea of rational actors. That is one of Neoclassical economics' fundamental principles, is that it assumes that all economic actors, all individuals within an economy, within a market, right, they will act rationally. And by acting rationally, we mean that they will act according to these principles, according to utility maximization. So all of the actors within the economy will do whatever they can to get the most amount of utility within their constraint choices, right? So this is the same concept in League of Legends, right? Imagine that you're playing against a champion on the enemy team, on the enemy side, alright? You can kind of predict what they're doing, what they are going to do, by assuming that, you know, they are rational actors and they will try to everything in their power to maximize their utility. Obviously, you know, it won't work 100% of the time because you have to remember, this is League of Legends. You have retarded people playing this game. But in general, like most of the time, like 95% of the time, okay, you can pretty much assume that the enemy player is a rational player, is a rational actor, and, you know, they will act rationally in order to maximize their utility. So I hope that, you know, this video makes sense, and I hope that you learned something from it. Again, just to recap one last time, concept of scarcity, constraint choices, right? You have a limited amount of resources, just like in League of Legends, right? There is only 6 minions per minion wave, so there is only a certain amount of gold that you can get per minion wave, alright? And minion wave, every time they respawn at each 30 seconds, alright? So there is only a limited amount of gold that you can obtain, alright? Everything in League of Legends is on a timer. This is on a timer, this is on a timer, this is on a timer, minions are on a timer, right? Your skills are on a timer. Everything in League of Legends is on a timer except for towers, obviously. Like, inhibitors, also timers. They respawn every 5 minutes. Baron, 6 minutes, 5 minutes. You get the idea. Wait, actually, I think Baron is 7 minutes, and Dragon is 6 minutes. And it's red buff and blue buff that spawns every 5 minutes. Anyway, all that just to say, everything in this game, right, is limited. There is only so much that you can get within a constrained amount of time. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So what you want to do is you want to make the rational decisions, the correct decisions to do what? To maximize your utility. But in this case, to maximize, let's say, your gold income, for example, right? You only have this much time. Let's say everyone is on a timer. Everyone only has 10 minutes, alright? You want to make the correct decisions to gain the most amount of gold compared to your enemy. Therefore, you will have an items advantage. Or maybe even like an experience advantage. You have a higher level because you pathed more efficiently. You made better decisions. You know what I mean? This is the concept of Neoclassical economics theory. And this is exactly what you need to do in your League of Legends game to outplay people. And you can always assume that the enemy team, the enemy player, they're trying to do the same. And you can kind of predict what they are going to do based on the idea that, the assumption that everyone is a rational actor. So hopefully you have learned something in this video, and if you have any questions, always feel free to ask me.